Okay, tonight we're going to talk about using Puzzilla to find your ancestors and their descendants, using a neat program called Puzzilla, which is a program I just absolutely love. Okay, so what is Puzzilla? Because many people aren't really familiar with it, even though it's been around for a while. From Puzzilla's own PR information, they say specifically that it creates a hyper-condensed visual family tree view. What you're seeing there on the right-hand side of the screen is a descendancy of a person, and this is hyper-condensed visually presented to you. That's what they're talking about. And yeah, for some people, this is almost frightening. And so for some people, this might not be the best program for you, but it really is an outstanding program, as long as you can deal with all the little dots and squares, as it shows you a big picture of your family. And that's what's so neat about it. It's an approved third-party product, a third-party tool that FamilySearch has authorized, and it works with our FamilySearch data. So knowing that, we've got to realize that when we're working in this, that Puzzilla's gone out and harvested our tree out of FamilySearch. And so if your tree has a lot of garbage in it, then it's going to be garbage in, garbage out. So it's really, important that you try to see that your tree be as accurate as it can be, because it's going to be showing you what shows in FamilySearch. And if that's not accurate, you're going to have a problem. And then the other thing is, the other half of it is, of course, we're using this to try to add new names into FamilySearch for the most part. And if we're going to do that, we want to be very careful that we add in people properly, that they're well documented, that we search for duplicates and do all those things that we can so that they're properly identified and truly unique, and not creating duplicates out in the tree. So we want to try to be careful and not just get carried away trying to see how many new people we can add in today. We want to have a contest, see how many good, well-defined, identified people we can add in. Okay, so to get to Puzzilla, you go to Puzzilla.org, and notice that Puzzilla's got a strange spelling. There's 2 Z's and there's 2 L's. And so if you type it in, and if you go Puzzilla.org or Puzzilla.com, either way, it should take you to this page if you spell Puzzilla correctly. And so it'll be a big blue page. It'll have that little puzzle piece up near the top, and it'll have that descendancy chart down at the bottom. And so if you found that page, you're on the right page. And right away, they try to give you some helps. Down at the bottom below the descendancy chart, there's a tutorial. And there's also a how-to section up on the top ribbon, right up by Puzzilla chart, and then how-to. So they have a couple of places right there on the home page that you can turn to if you need some extra help beyond this presentation. And to sign in, they give you 2 chances. They have the great big sign in right in the middle. And yes, it comes in 2 versions, free and premium, and we'll talk about that tonight. You can click there, or you can click up at the very top right-hand corner where it says sign in. Either one of them works, and they do exactly the same thing. And each day or each session, when you first sign in, you'll be directed to this little third-party product statement that you will find in all the third-party products that have to access your data and tree, saying you need to give permission to, in this case, Puzzilla, to look at your tree. And you need to click OK, or you won't be able to use the program. Okay, when you first turn it on, when you first go into it after clicking OK, it builds a pedigree chart for you. And it's based on your account. It knows who you are. It knows what your tree looks like, and it pulls the data off. Now, the Puzzilla basic program is what we'll talk about first, the free version. This is what anybody could get. You can get this evening and have the same features that we're going to be talking about right now without having to pay anything. I'm trying to move my little bar that has all the things for Zoom around so that I can see my home page here. Okay, so what we'll see later is this tree doesn't look like much. It's just a bunch of dots. If I would mouse it over a live version of this, every time I go over one of these dots, I would be able to see who that person is. And you'll see this in a few minutes. But for right now, this is the free version. And when you first sign in, it builds your tree based on what's there. The red circles in that little tree are females. In this case, your female ancestors. And the blue boxes or little blue squares are your male ancestors. The tree can be set from 0, which would be just you, and this is you, up to 12 generations. And you can see right now it's set at 8 generations. So you and 7 generations back. You may find you really don't want to try to do 12 because it just becomes a bunch of jumbled mess out there in those last couple of generations, but it can be done. And you can change the ID of the beginning person, the person that goes here, by just clicking change ID and put any deceased person from tree in there. So that if you're working with the public and you're helping a patron, you can put one of the patron's deceased ancestors up here where it says change ID, and it will create the pedigree chart for that person. So this is a very helpful program for not just you, but for people you help. Okay, so that change ID is very important. We'll talk about that again in a little bit. Okay, and then there's a box at the bottom left that I've got in red there that tells you, in this case, that the primary person, this person here, is you. This is one of my accounts. And so that's me from that account. If I had clicked on somebody out here, it would show me the pathway, the names of the people to get me between me and that person up in here that I clicked on. And so these can be very helpful. I love to copy these when I'm working with a patron and just have a paper, an electronic page, notebook or whatever, and just paste these onto there because it'll help me know where I'm at. There's nothing worse than going back maybe to a second pedigree on a person's line and then doing a descendancy down from there. And then after a while, it's like, okay, how did I get here? Well, these little boxes will tell you exactly how you get there. Okay, now there are 3 filters in this free version. Filters are things that help you work with your tree. The first one is born in the last 110 years. We know that's been developed in this program to show us the people, physically show us the people that are born within the last 110 years, because those are people we're not supposed to be doing temple work for unless we are immediate family or we have their permission from immediate family. And so those are shown with little gray boxes. There's only 2 here, my mother and father. This was made enough years ago that my father had a gray box. He wouldn't have it anymore because he was born in 1908. And so he doesn't have that box anymore because he's over 110 years old. Okay, now that's what those represent. Those little boxes are hard to see, I realize, on the screen, but they are there. You just have to look closely. Another type of box that you're not going to see on this screen are people who died at the age of 16 or younger. and they'll have a little yellow box. Now, you really shouldn't expect to see that on your pedigree, because these people are your ancestors, and for the most part, they needed to be over 16 before they had your ancestor. You know, their child that became your ancestor. So there's not a lot of times that people of that age are actually going to show up in a pedigree. Now, they will show up in descendancies. In fact, it's kind of sad. You'll see hundreds of these little children that died, or young children that died. And then the last one is one that's really too cool, and that's targets. And that's not turned on this screen right now. Targets are the people we're basically looking for in Puzzilla. They're either, if we're looking at our pedigree like we are here, they would be the brick wall people of the pedigree. We know what that means, most of us. The people that are the dead ends on the pedigree. And in the descendancy, they're kind of like the brick wall people there coming down. They're the people that don't show any descendants. And so they've helped us by putting little red boxes by people when you turn on targets. And we'll show you this in just a second. Those 3 filters are available to everybody. And with those 3 filters, you can do an awful lot with Puzzilla. Okay, so here I have turned on targets. And in this case, since it's a pedigree, these are dead end people. And this was a time several years ago when I realized that I had a bunch of cleanup to do, because those shouldn't have been dead ends. That shouldn't have been a dead end. 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 So there were some issues that I needed to fix. And so it was really nice, because I visually saw a bunch of dead ends in my pedigree. And I said, whoa, there's something wrong here. Now, what is nice about the target feature, after I click on targets, it will show those. I could also change it, and I could have targets be for just a certain location. I could see where people from a certain place are on my pedigree chart. Like I could put in England, and it would show everybody that showed England as a birth, marriage, or death location. Or I could focus in on people born between this year and that year, a birth year range. And they would show everybody, say, born between 1800 and 1850. So there are some other things I can do besides dead ends. It'll give me dead ends from a certain place, or dead ends with a certain age range or date range for birth. Okay, so now I'll show you a little bit how this kind of works. Going into that pedigree chart, I went and I was mousing over people, and I came to what was a blue box here, a blue square. And when I moused over it, I saw that it was Matthew McDowell, and he was born in this range here and died in that range there. We don't have a lot of information on him. So I clicked on him so that it would stay put, that it would stay up there on the screen after I moved my mouse away. When it does that, it turns his blue box into a green box, which I don't like, but that's the color they chose. But anyway, I now know a little bit about him. And, that screen pops up. Now, as I mouse over these others, if I hadn't clicked on his, then this box would show up for each of these people, so I could know where I was, in this case, in my pedigree. Now, I have 3 options from that box that pops up. I can either go look at his descendants, or I can look at his ancestors, and he's a dead end, so I don't think I'm going to get to see very much if I click ancestors for him. Or I can view him in Family Tree, because those are the 3 main things you're going to be doing in Puzzilla. Puzzilla isn't where you do your work. Puzzilla is where you find a person, for whatever reason you're trying to find them. And then from there, you can either see the person's descendants, ancestors, or go look at them in Tree, which is where you're going to want to go if you want to make some changes and add new people into Tree. And now note the box over here. And because I clicked on Matthew there, I now have the pathway between him and me. We go to my father, to his mother, to her mother, and then back to Matthew. So now I have a nice little pathway to show me how to get back to this person. And like I said before, this works out real good when you're working with people that are your patrons and you're not that familiar with their tree and you want to keep track of where you're at and what you're doing. Just do a copy and paste of those little images. The other thing that's nice is if I pick Descendants for him, and that's what I'm going to pick, it's not going to wipe this page out. It'll just open up a new tab and put the Descendants in the next tab over. So all the prior views are still going to be there till I physically close them. So that's really nice. Okay, so the key point here, remember, you're looking at the big picture. You're not actually going to do your work here. You're going to use this program to help you figure out what you want to do. And then you're going to go over into Tree ultimately. And there you will do your work. Okay, so I clicked on Matthew's descendant views. And this is what the descendancy looks like. And this is hard for a lot of people to figure out. So I did some help for you. The dots are in concentric circles. You will not get these circles in your descendancies. I drew these so that you could see them. You're going to have to be able to visualize this on your own. Now, Matthew, our good friend here, my ancestor, is that dot in the middle. From him, you'll see there's 4 lines that go out. And by the way, before I go any further, there's a yellow path here. It goes like this, and then for some reason stops right there. That path is going to show me, that's what I call the yellow brick road. That's the path that leads to me, so that I can find the path for my ancestors. In other words, this is Mary McDowell that I go through to get to me from Matthew, and then this is her daughter that I go through. And then this is my grandfather, and I believe this is my dad, and I'd be the next generation out here. But anyway, it shows you here that there are 4 children of Matthew in FamilySearch. There's a boy, blue box, and 3 red circles, so there's 3 girls. There's 4 children that are his children. Now the next ring of dots are the grandkids. And so this daughter had a bunch of children, and all of these dots are all children of hers. This child had no descendants showing. That child has no descendants showing. And this child here has several children. Okay, so the blue circle are the grandkids. The next circle out, the red circle that I drew, are the great-grandkids. And then the furthest group out there that I didn't put a circle on, but they're the ones that stick out there. They're the 4th generation. They're the great-great-grandkids. Okay, and this is the most generations that family or can be shown with this descendancy view. And this, I picked this one because there's not a lot of people here. You're going to see others that have a gazillion people. And you'll see why it only goes out 4 generations. It's amazing how many descendants a person can have. And you will see here a couple of yellow boxes because that died at 16 or younger is there. And so there's one of them right there. And there's a couple of others up in this area. And that's very unusual. There's only 3 out of all these people that died real young. Like I say, that's really a sad commentary on health practices in the old days. Okay, turning on targets. Remember, the targets are dead end people. Now we're in a descendancy, so this means who are the people on this screen that don't have any children? I mean, you can pretty well tell where they are, obviously, but it's nice to see it with this red tag for targets on them, because when you get a lot, sometimes they're a little bit harder to see. But you can see most of the people here are dead ends. And one thing you need to realize is that the fourth generation out, that last generation, they never mark targets on that generation. And that's because this program only developed the first 4 generations. To be able to tell you if a person in the 4th generation, one of these people here, is a target person, it would have to develop the 5th generation. And we didn't ask it to do that. So that last generation out there is never marked for targets. You can't just say, well, there's no red out there, so they all keep going. No, it's just, it doesn't calculate for them. It's just the way the program's written. Okay, remember the targets can be set for a location or a birth range. If you want to just focus on people born, say 1800 to 1850, you can put that in under birth and it'll only put the red boxes on people in that birth range. But in this case, it's just everybody here. Okay, so now let's see what we could actually do. I'll do a very, very brief little exercise and show you how we can add some names to this particular pedigree. So I went over in it and I came to this particular person who had the red box. So they're a dead end person. And by the way, the one thing Puzzilla does not show is if you have a spouse. It only shows the direct ancestors, or the direct descendants in this case, I should say. And so we don't know if John had a spouse or not without going over to tree. But I picked John because he said it showed no descendants, and it showed that he was born in 1831 and died in 1910. So he lived a nice long life. And so I went looking and I found a death certificate. And I won't go through the details on these, but I found a death certificate that named his parents. So I knew it really was the right guy. And it named a wife, and there was no wife in tree. So I said, okay, he's born in 1830. 1831, he'd be 49 in 1880. So let's go look at the 1880 census. So I looked at that one source and I found the wife there and 7 children. And when we went and added those children in and did our due diligence, trying to put some more information with them, lo and behold, they were all new to tree. And so I had a wife and 7 children that had never been in tree, just by finding them by looking for this target person. That's how this works. That's what you're trying to do here, is find places where you can add names. And the most logical place is on a dead end. Now, yes, it's true. There's like 4 children here. That doesn't mean there isn't a 5th or a 6th or a 7th child, but there's less likely that to happen than children over here when the person shows nothing. Now, yes, some people never married. Some people married, never had any children. So that's possible. But you're going to find the most bang for your buck, if you want to call it that, by looking for these target people. Okay. Now, that was using the premium or the free version. Now, like I said, there is a premium version. Premium version costs $39 a year, $39 a year, $39.95. Now, understand, I am not employed by Puzzilla. I have no connection with Puzzilla in any way, shape, or form. I'm a user just like you. I pay for the premium version because I love it, and I use this program a lot. You don't have to pay for it. In fact, you can actually use it at the Family History Center for free. The paid version is on the computers at the Family History Center. Now, you might wonder, why does this person charge? Well, here's why. Every time it accesses your tree, it uses the internet. And so when you make a request to pull your tree up It goes to Puzzilla, it goes to Puzilla's servers. Puzilla's servers access the FamilySearch servers and pull that information off, organize it, and ship it off to your computer. That takes bandwidth. That has to be paid for by Puzzilla. And so since they don't want to go out of business because they're bankrupt, they have to charge. And so this charge of $39, which really is not a bad deal at all, covers all the people that are using it for free and covers, the use of the internet for the people that pay. And apparently it works for them. They haven't raised the price in forever. Now, I talked to the owner at RootsTech, I think it was back in 2018, and he told me that the way this is set up, it's perfectly okay. Like, I buy a yearly subscription. My wife can use my subscription. The catch is it's linked to my account, so I have to give her my username and password. She goes in and signs in with my username and password, and then she can use the pay version, the premium version of Puzzilla, and it's perfectly okay. Everybody in the immediate family is okay to go and technically steal the usage of the premium version, as long as it's only the immediate family members. Now, that's why when I showed you that link on the page there where it said change ID, if my wife wanted to use this and she wanted to see her family, she signs into my account, goes up to change ID, and she can put either her dad or her mother in there because they're both passed away now, and she'll be able to see their pedigrees and be able to work off of that. So that's why that change ID is so valuable. And remember, this is to be done within a family. You're not to give it to the patrons at the Family History Center. I don't think you'd want to give them your username and password anyway, but just don't do that. Okay, and if you use it a lot, this might be worth going with. If you use it just periodically, the free version is probably fine. And if you need to, you can go down to the Family History Center and use the premium. Okay, so what we're going to talk about are the filters that are there in the red circle. These are the things that are unique to the premium version. Okay, one of them is ordinances. I can click and get a descendancy, in this case, showing, and then click on ordinances, and in this case also have targets clicked on, and it's going to show me a little green box by everybody that has one or more temple ordinance that needs to be done, and they're all going to show up in green. Of course, I have to be aware, like if I look at this person down here that my mouse is on, it's a male. He has temple ordinances that need to be done, but he's also got the gray box for the 110 years. So he's within the 110-year period. Okay, so he's not a person I would necessarily be looking at if I'm looking for temple ordinances. Okay, this part of the tree is probably unusual because there are so many green boxes, but that does happen. Okay, so I chose down here beside this red circle, I picked this one child where you see the green circle, and she's Anna Coleman. And I picked her because it appears that she and her siblings, at least those 4 siblings, all show that they need ordinances, which is kind of unusual. And so I went to her view and family tree, and I looked at her and these other 3 siblings, and even a couple of them had spouses that were green. And so there were like 6 people right there that needed to have temple work done. They could all be reserved. And that's all the work I had to do to get them, was just identify them. And you see a whole family like that are all green. Usually there's a lot of work that can be done in that family. Okay, now what I should do, and I did, is go in and add sources to these people, make sure that we've fleshed them out. They've got as complete a birth and death information as we can, spouses if they had any, and things like that, so that if there are duplicates, they won't be duplicated. That we'll be able to merge and get rid of the duplicate. Okay, another feature, and one that I absolutely love, if you've ever worked in anywhere in Tree and you had trouble keeping track of where you've been, like say you're doing a descendancy of this person here that's got this circle, and you need to quit today and come back tomorrow, how are you going to know where to go? Well, there's a neat feature. One of these filters is called My Changes. And when you click on that, it highlights for the people that are on the screen, every one of them that you have left your footprint on. And by that, I mean every person on this part of the tree where you have edited something, added something, made changes to in any way, and left your name as a person that made an alteration to that record, it's going to show that. And so I can go back to this person and say, okay, now where shall I go today? I click on My Changes and I see, well, let's see, I've worked through here. I've worked through here. Okay, here's where I need to go today. And I can see right away where to pick up my work, if I'm working systematically through the tree to the right or to the left. And so I love this My Changes. It's the only place I know that you can ever find this to use with Family Tree. There's no other program that does this. Another one that is very unique is possible duplicates. Now there is one screen besides the person page for everybody. There's one screen in the pedigree view, the standard, your traditional pedigree, that you would be able to see if people marked if they have possible duplicates. But there's no way to have a big expansive view of either your pedigree or descendancy and turn on possible duplicates and see where they all are. In this case, it's a descendancy. Here's a possible duplicate there. Here's a possible duplicate. Here's a possible duplicate. Here's a possible duplicate. Here's a possible duplicate. I can see them all over the place. I clicked on this one and it's Norman Lessig. And so I can go over here and view him in Family Tree and clear this up, hopefully. Actually, I guess he's right there. Yeah, because that's the green box. Okay, now understand these are the people FamilySearch says have duplicates. So these are people that have a very close match to a duplicate. There could be many other people on this screen that in fact have duplicates, but those duplicates are less obvious. So don't fall into the trap of thinking these are the only people that have duplicates. As we all know, as we add information to people, duplicates start appearing out of nowhere. So just beware. It's not the end all for duplicates, but it does show you where FamilySearch says there are duplicates. Okay, so as I clean up Norman, besides getting rid of a duplicate record, it's possible that I'll unearth some other information about him that might lead to some new people, because he's showing that he has no descendants. This might help me to get some descendants for him. Okay, another one is search. And this is a filter that allows you to do some searches through your tree for certain things. And so in this case, I could put a name, a place, an ID number, a date range, anything I want in this first box. I can put a date range actually for birth in that box below, but I just curious, this is my pedigree. Which people in my pedigree were either born, married, or died in Pennsylvania? So I did that. I typed Pennsylvania, I click search, And there's my mom's Pennsylvania heritage, half of my tree. And so it really shows it up easy. Okay. I could have done other things. I could have just put in a surname. I could have put in Sands, and it would have just highlighted the people with the last name of Sands or had Sands in their last name. Okay, so I did Pennsylvania in that case. Now, sources, that's another one. Now, as you see here, this is a well-developed descendancy. You see why I say there can be a gazillion people there, and you don't want more than 4 generations. This is just generation 2, 3, and 4. And you can see how big a mess this is because there are so many descendants. Okay, what I'm looking for are people with sources. Well, in actuality, if people are doing what they're supposed to be doing on FamilySearch, what I would use this for is to find people that don't have sources, because most everybody else is going to have a red box, a light red box on there saying they have sources. And there'll be very few that don't have that red box. And you see one little section here where there's a whole family, and isn't it interesting? No red box for sources, no lines going out here with descendants. So it's probable that these people are people that need to be sourced, and that will probably grow the tree. So when I'm doing sources, I'm usually really looking not for the people with the sources, but for the people without. Okay, I did another search. I got it a little bit out of order here. This is going back to that search filter, and I put in KW. Now, I know I've been told by Ron Tanner himself that what I'm going to say now is not accurate, but I still say it is. That many, not all, but many of the people who belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints were all put into tree on the same day, when it just so happened that these random ID numbers that were generated all started with KW. And so if you find people whose IDs start with KW, they're almost always members of the church, either currently or in the past. If you're a member of the church, your own ID that's on your record will be a KW record, I almost guarantee you. So I put in KW, and it shows me exactly my LDS heritage. Those are exactly the people who had joined the church on my pedigree. So you can see I have a very small LDS heritage. And that's just another way to use the search. Now, hints, that's one more of these. This one can be a little bit trickier. Hints is important because hints are what we really want to find to grow the tree the easiest, because we don't have to go out looking for sources for the people, because FamilySearch has said, for this guy here, there's this hint, this hint, this hint, and this hint. All we've got to do is process those hints, assuming that they're accurate, and we could possibly add some people. So we can turn on hints and see that orange box by everybody that shows they've got at least one hint. And you can even search and filter those hints up to 10 per person. And quite frankly, I very rarely have ever seen anybody that had 10 hints, but it will search up to 10 hints. Like if I put the word census in here, I just want a hint that has the word census in it. It would then drop off any of those orange boxes for people that didn't have a census hint, and leave me the people that have a census hint. And you and I all know the census is the gold mine for adding people into tree. The single easiest and best source there is for adding in people to tree is a census record. And so hints can be very helpful. It also kind of shows you how much people have been working on this line. If everybody's got hints, it's probably a line that nobody's been playing in for a long time. Nobody's been working in it. Okay, they have one other one called New Person. This is a little bit tricky in that it's quite involved. It's the newest thing that they've come up with. You can see over here the red circle around New Person. You can't really do it at first. Before you can use it, you have to do a couple of things. They even have a video for you to see. If you try clicking on New Person, you will get this screen the first time. And you'll get a little video that shows you the steps to do it. And it will also provide you with instructions on how to add the Puzzilla Chrome extension to your Chrome browser. You have to use the Chrome browser with this feature. And so that has to be uploaded into your Chrome browser. Once you've done that, then you're ready to try to do New Person. And the first thing you do is not click on New Person. But the little video that talks about it will tell you, first thing you do is you turn on hints, because New Person is going to search through all the hints on all the people on the screen that you have showing, looking for hints that will add somebody new to tree that appears to be truly new. It's going to go through all this for you. Okay, so the first thing you do is you load hints. And this is after you've added that Chrome browser extension. Then you go click on New Person. And then, and I know they wouldn't like me saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway, you're in for a long wait. So at that point, I either go eat dinner or go to Costco or watch a baseball game on TV or do something that takes a lot of time, because it's going to be a while before you're going to be able to use your computer again, because the program has to process each and every hint on each and every person on the screen that you have up on your screen. And that's going to take a lot of time. When it's finally done, and I'm saying you're looking at least an hour probably for a fully developed pedigree, you will have some people that have little black boxes. Those are people that they have identified. There is a hint for that person that will add somebody into tree. So when you click on that little box, this will come up. Whoops. This will come up, and it's saying that that person was Phoebe Laro Palmer. And there's a 1910 census for Phoebe. Click on it and then go through and process this hint into tree, and you're going to add somebody new. And that's how this works. You're not going to get very many of those black boxes. At least I haven't from my experience. I personally feel like I can find them on my own quicker. But this is a way to totally automate the system. And for some people, it might turn into a gold mine. I don't know. Okay, they put a couple of guidelines in here. One of them is to remind you again, hey, be careful. You know, this tree is what is ever in FamilySearch. If it's garbage, you're going to have problems. The other thing is a warning to you, don't get carried away reserving names. Of course, they've fixed that up now by limiting you to 300 reservations that aren't shared. But they're trying to remind you, because this is a possibility using this program, that you'll find so much. Okay, so let's try a couple of demos and just show you in real life quickly how this works. So to do this, there's some things to remember. You're probably going to find more success if you go back in your pedigree beyond the time your family joined the church, probably to people born in the late 1700s to mid 1700s. Choose a line that may be less researched. You know, you can look at the pedigree in FamilySearch, and you can turn on sources and memories and stories and pictures, and you can kind of get a feel for what lines are busy and which lines aren't. The less researched the line is, the more success you'll have. If you find a line that's in the US and that's really the only place you're familiar doing research, then use that one. And you can go back further than your initial tree. If you're working for a patron and it's a young patron, you're probably going to have to go to a second tree to get far enough back to even get to the 1700s. And then make sure that where you're working is an accurate tree. Make sure there aren't any duplicates. You can check duplicates on the pedigree. You can go walk up the line back to that person, just looking to see if the family groups look okay and things like that. Okay, so I'm over on my mother's side of the family where I've done most of the research myself. I'm in my Sands family. And so I picked a person way back there, and I'm going to choose Descendants. Actually, the one I'm going to use is Daniel's father, John, who was born about 30 years earlier, and I'm going to do his descendants, but that's beside the point. So this was John Sands' descendants, and you can see it's pretty full. There are places where there's gaps, where there's a lot of people that haven't been developed. There's other places where there's a lot. And so as I was looking at it, for some reason, my eye was drawn to this poor little sick twig here, where it goes from one person to one person to one person. And usually I would go for dead ends, but 1 to 1 to 1 is also kind of strange in the old days before birth control and things like that. So I clicked on that dot that's been turned green. It's Michael Sands, born in 1799, died in 1854. So he's alive in 1850. Why is that important? Because he'll be on the 1850 census, hopefully. So I'm going to go over to him in tree, because remember, I got to work over in tree. So I know he's got one child. So when I go over here, here's the whole family. Michael Sands and Ann Hoffman, and their one child that we know of, Hannah, who was born in 1848, or 42, excuse me. She would be 8 years old in 1850. So why am I focusing on this 1850 census? Because in the US, and these people are in Pennsylvania, in the US, the 1850 census is the first one where all the members of the family are listed, or all the people in the household are listed. Okay, so I'm on Michael's page. That's because he's darker here. I know that. I'm going to go over on the right-hand side under search records and click family search and see if I can find an 1850 record for Michael Sands. And when I pull it up, this is an old version of the screen, but it still shows what we need. The very first record for him, Michael Sands, is the 1850 census, born in 1799. That's an exact match. And he's residing in Berks County, Pennsylvania, and that's the county that he lived in. There's a bunch of people listed over here. The first person is Ann. Well, usually the first name after the head of the household is the person's spouse. And so I'm assuming that means it's probably Ann Hoffman. So I'm thinking, wow, Ann, there's a bunch of people there. I don't see that daughter that we had before either. So let's go look at that record. So here's the transcription. And this looks like it could be a gold mine, because sure enough, it's Michael Sands. They're living in Berks County, born in 1799. The first person listed after him is Ann. She's 42, which fits the age that was in the family search. Fits her pretty good. And then there's all these other people. Now, the bad part is there's no relationship showing here. We can't assume that these are all their children. It's logical that they are, but they don't have to be. They could have inherited some of the kids from a brother or sister or the next door neighbor. So we got to be a little bit careful, but this looks like it's a gold mine. And to seal the deal, there is an 8-year-old daughter named Hannah M. So I've got Michael and his wife Ann and daughter Hannah. This is definitely the family. But now I've got a dilemma. What am I going to do? If I source this, they all get put in tree right now. And either I have to reserve them and they might not even be my relatives, or I have to leave them unreserved and somebody else is going to grab them. And so what I do is I do a selective download of this family. I'm going to pick the children one at a time to add in. So I'm going to play a little game. I'm going to say, okay, where do I want to start? Do I want to start at the bottom, the top, or do I want to pick a good name, an uncommon person's name? And that's what I want to do. I've done tons of Sands research. I have never seen a Washington Sands before. So I'm going to start with Washington just for the heck of it. And so I went in and added in, well, you'll find out I add in Michael and Ann and Washington from this census and also Hannah. And then I don't put the other kids in until I work on them. I just leave them out of the equation. So what I did is I said, okay, what can I do to move things along in this family? Let's try seeing if I can find a death certificate for Washington. Born in 1830, Pennsylvania starts death certificates 1906. Maybe he lived long enough. I didn't have a death date. So I go over to Ancestry and I do a search for Washington Sands, 1831, Pennsylvania. And sure enough, up came a death certificate. And you can't find them anywhere except on Ancestry. And so how do I know this is my Michael or my Washington? Because his father is Michael and his mother is Ann Huffman. Hoffman, Huffman, German type names, spellings don't mean a lot. And so that's good. So now I know he lived to be a good ripe old age of 82, died in 1914. Now I wonder if he's married, because at this point, FamilySearch doesn't show him within, he wasn't even in FamilySearch. I put him in there as a single person. Is he married? Well, how could I find out? Well, let's try a census. He lives to 1914. 1880 would be 49 years old. So let's go look there. And sure enough, I find on the 1880 census, Washington Sands living with his wife, Elizabeth, and a couple of servants and a servant. Okay, no children. I said, darn it. I was hoping to have a whole bunch of children there, but there doesn't appear to be any. So I went further, and I won't show you the censuses, but I searched 1900 and 1910. There were no children listed in either one. The 1900 census, Elizabeth had to verify if she'd ever had children, how many were living, and she said she had never had any children. Okay, and I did one other little thing. I thought, well, let's just see if they're in a public tree at Ancestry, since I'm over there anyway. And I pulled it up for a Washington Sands with a wife, Elizabeth. There was one tree. And that one tree said her last name was Sheeler, Sheeler. So how do we verify this? I said, well, I got lucky with Washington. Let's try a death certificate for Elizabeth. And lo and behold, Elizabeth hung on until March of 1906, which was very kind of her for me, because 1906 is when Pennsylvania started death certificates. If she had died a year earlier, I wouldn't have this. And you notice it says Elizabeth Sands, Elizabeth Sheeler, has a full birth date and place, full death date, died in Berks County. Here's her father, there's her mother. How do I know this is the right Elizabeth Sands? Well, it just so happens that Washington is the person that signed the death certificate. So that's the sealer on this. This is absolutely Washington's wife, Elizabeth, who died in 1906. Okay, With that much information, I had to go through and do a bunch of sourcing. Source the 1850 census for just Michael and Ann and Washington and Hannah. Go to the 1880 census and put Washington and Elizabeth in. Source Washington's death certificate, Elizabeth's death certificate. See if I can find any other sources for them. Run duplicate searches. And when I was done, I found out I was so excited about finding kids. I never bothered to see if Michael and Ann Hoffman had their work done, and their work wasn't even done. So they needed work. I went to find a grave, and I found full birth and death information on both Michael and Ann Hoffman. Okay, now you don't have to have complete dates, but I like to try to get that if I can. And so this family of Michael and Ann with a dozen or so kids is going to provide me with innumerable new people to put into Tree. To start with, I've already got this much. I've got Michael and Ann and Washington and Hannah and Washington's wife, Elizabeth, all needing all their work. So that's a total of 5 people right there, just right off the top. Now, what happened with this tree that started out with just one person to one person to one person? This is Michael now, and one of these people is Washington. I think it's this one here. No, that's a girl. I have to figure out which one it is. Probably this one here. And then all of these people have been developed since I started working on this, because we would have only had just that to that to that originally, just that one little line. That shows you how much you can grow the tree using Puzzilla. And it really, this is all I used. I used the records at FamilySearch. Over at Ancestry, I used their public tree one time just to see if there happened to be a tree. And I used their record groups. Basically, all I used was the Pennsylvania death certificates. I did a glance at Find a Grave, and I didn't actually use it, but I could have used Google and search for Washington Sands and Elizabeth Sheeler if I had wanted to do a search on Google to get some more. Now I'll just show you one other real brief one. I went back to James Sands here, and I'm going to explore another part. Now I want to get rid of Washington because most of this screen is now Washington's descendants. And so what I did is, or Michael's descendants. Here's Michael. So what I did is I highlight Michael, and then I go down here underneath where it says Michael, who I've highlighted, and it says hide or show. If I want to hide all of these names, all these people that are Michael's descendants, I just click that box. And when I do, voila, they're gone. Now I can do the other families that are here and not have to worry about picking through all of Michael's descendants. I can just work on the other people that are in here. And so that reduces the size of the chart, makes it a lot easier to see things. And so I chose to work on a William D. Sands. He happens to be right there. He had hints and he had no descendants. This is his. He lived from 1843 to 1924. To me, it's logical. He lived to be 81 that he would have children. So I clicked on View Him in FamilySearch. And that's all there was. He has no wife, no children, but he has a bunch of hints. In fact, it says show 6. Well, it's not really 6 hints. There's one thing here about he may have children and 5 hints. So I clicked on show all. And the third hint down happens to be death or burials. And it looks like it's a book And I'm guessing that it's a transcription of a cemetery, where somebody's walked through the cemetery and transcribed them in the order that they were in the cemetery, because there's a lot of these for Pennsylvania in FamilySearch. So I said, okay, let's look at that page. And sure enough, that's what it is. It's a transcription of a cemetery. And in red here, buried next to each other is a William D. Sands with the age range that I have. He shows that he was a volunteer in the Civil War for Pennsylvania volunteers. And there's a Emma Sands listed with him, born about the same time. Does not say it's his wife, but you would assume it's his wife. Now, just for interest, notice just next to Emma is buried a Mary Bowman. Just remember the surname Bowman. So we need to source this in FamilySearch and see what else we can find. Let's see if we can find this family on a census. 1870 census will work. The only trouble, it's not going to show relationships. But look at this family. It's a Mary Bowman family. Remember, Mary buried next to Emma. She's 53. She's the head of the household. There's a Sally Bowman. That's probably her daughter. And then William Sands and Emma. And I know they're married now, because if you were married within the last year, they had to put in the month of marriage. Since this census was done on the 15th of August, 1870, and they were married in May, that means May of 1870, they were married. So the assumption is Emma's probably the daughter of Mary Bowman and the sister of Sally, but we don't know. So let's try another source. Well, first let's put her in. I hadn't done that yet. So I sourced this 1870 census because I now can put her in as a spouse. When I clicked add, it brings it over here and adds Sands in as her last name. It's probably not Sands. That's her married name. He could have married a Sands, and that's happened. It's more likely she's a Bowman, but I don't know that yet. So I'll just leave her as Bowman. And I end up creating a new person because it doesn't show me any possible duplicates. Okay, so now I go look at some new hints. Now they're showing me the 1880 census as a hint. That wasn't there before. And when I look at that, well, William and Emma now have a daughter and a son that I can add into FamilySearch. And Mary Bowman is listed as the mother-in-law. So she is listed as Emma Sands' mother, which means you would assume then that Emma's last name is Bowman. It might not be, because that mother could have been remarried. This could be a remarried name, but it isn't. This is her maiden, or not her maiden name, but her married name. And so I can go in and source that, and I can also add Bowman to Mary's name. And in fact, I can go down to the next source that popped up, and there's their marriage. And now there's no question, because William D. Sands married Emma Bowman on 12th of May, 1870, just like it said in the census. So see, all these things fit together really nice. And when I'm done, I've got a nice family to put together. Okay, now there's one last thing, a secret feature, and we'll be done. And I apologize for the length of this. If you have the premium version, you can unlock some neat things by just pressing Control-I. That letter after the control is a capital I. Control-I. When you press it the first time, it'll give you the names of the people. It'll turn those dots, it'll add to those dots the names of the people that go with those dots. Don't try this on a descendancy view, you'll go insane. There'll be too many if you have a normal descendancy. If you press Control-I again, the names change to birth and death dates. and you can see everybody's birth and death dates. Then you can press Control-I again and see where they were born, if they show it in FamilySearch. Then if you press Control-I, it'll take you back to the normal view. So this is just a hidden feature that for whatever reason, they've never put out on their website how to use. This is just something that's there, but you have to have the premium version. So you got to use it at the Family History Center or buy it. Okay, so in conclusion, when you want to do descendancy research, this is really a nice tool, either helping you with ancestry or descendancy. Don't be afraid to use it, play around with it. I think you'll find that you'll love it. So do we have any questions?